Welcome to Fearless and Unfiltered. Real talk, real challenges, and real wisdom from two badass BFFs that aren't afraid to say it like it is.
We're here to share stories that inspire, lessons that empower, and a whole lot of laughs along the way.
Get ready to get fearless.
Get unfiltered.
And get real with Carrie and Vicky. Hey, welcome into this episode of Fearless and Unfiltered podcast with Carrie and Vicky. We're going to dive deep into the transformative power of the pause. Yes, how taking a moment to just stop, breathe, and respond consciously can actually literally change the course of your life. Boy, is that not true. Emotions are a natural part of life, but they don't have to control us. So by recognizing our triggers, and I guarantee you there's going to be plenty here, practicing the pause and using self-awareness, reframing it, we can actually shift our reactive behavior to the conscious response that we should, that leads to healthier interactions and definitely greater control over your emotions.
Oh my goodness. Whether it's dealing with parenting frustrations, workplace stress, or relationship dynamics, we're going to explore how to pause, breathe, and choose your response in a way that empowers you and brings more peace into your life. So join us as we start building that pause muscle today, because emotional freedom is within your control.
You know, Carrie, I swear I can't wait to see the comments on this one, because, you know, there's so many triggers that either demand an emotional response or chooses that we need to make an emotional response. But man, recently this has been on the struggle bus for me in my household. So not necessarily on mine, but my children's emotional response. So I know you guys are going to have some fun with what triggers you, but I really hope that they get some little life nuggets, some gold nuggets to pause and breathe, because it's so essential for this. You know, we were talking about what are some of those triggers, you know, and then what does that lead to? So, you know, we were talking about this episode earlier, and I was like, probably the one thing that most people can relate to immediately is road rage, traffic.
Yeah, in fact, my soon-to-be stepson has a really bad problem with road rage and traffic, and you know.
I remember that one story. You know, this is interesting, because the day and age that we're in, you never know what that person that just cut you off is going to do. You know what I'm saying? And what was really bizarre to me is that is one thing that you really need to take this power of the pause into, because man, it could be a life or death situation. And I do remember when remember your kiddo was at a stop sign, and some guy was like being very aggressive with them, and like then hitting the car, and you know, he didn't know what to do. And
oh my God, listen, let me just go into that story. Okay. So he was 17 years old at this time. My 17-year-old son he was with Trenton. Okay. So I don't know where they went, but they were in a 2-lane road where he tried to go around and apparently pissed off a guy. So pissed off another car in traffic.
Yeah. And
this guy ends up coming and rear-ending my son. Like literally, his friend who was in the passenger side seat said, "Kaysen, I think he's going to hit us. I think this guy's going to hit us." And then he rear-ended him. But guess what my son does? He leaves the scene. And he calls me and he says, "This guy's chasing me. He's going to kill us." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I was just in a car accident. This guy is chasing us and he's going to kill us." And I'm like, "You left the scene of the accident? Are you crazy?"
Yes.
So I'm on the phone, and then here comes my car driving down the street. It's smoking, like the back bumper's falling off, and he shouldn't even been driving. So
no, it's just one of those things. I think that there's so many people that can relate to, because there are people that basically react emotionally instead of consciously, and I think this kind of is a good one to start us off with, to kind of get into this conversation. But you know what happens is, if you do not take the time to pause, you might say something that you're going to regret later. And I think that this is kind of how the topic came up to like cover this, is because I think there's a lot of people that struggle with this. And then there's sometimes you can't take those words back. There's sometimes that it gets you into some serious consequences just by you reacting emotionally versus breathing, thinking about it. And so let's talk about, why is that so important to people?
I mean, here's the deal. Most people struggle with emotional regulation because I think our emotions take over. In fact, science says that your amygdala, which is responsible for your emotions, actually activates quicker than your prefrontal cortex. So we emotionally react before our brain is even able to respond. And it's by milliseconds, so it's not that big of a deal. But we have to learn how to regulate our emotions. Mm-hmm. We aren't, in school, I don't think they have emotional intelligence training, do they? Which I think that they need to have.
Right.
Because when we think about emotional regulation, it's your fight or flight nervous response that's kicking in. Okay. So if you get angry, if you get frustrated, if you get,
hurt,
right. So all of these feelings, these are feelings. Now let's talk about the results formula, because I teach this all the time. So the results formula goes a little something like this. Your thoughts, we think over 60,000 thoughts on a daily basis.
Yes. This is crazy.
80% of those are typically negative, and 95% of those are from the past. So if we understand that we're always thinking, we're thinking, well, guess what? Our thoughts cause our feelings.
Yep.
And so if you're thinking a thought like, this guy's going to hit me, right, with the car, then I'm going to feel my fight or flight nervous response is activated. So I'm going to feel this way. And based upon that feeling, I'm going to act a certain way. So your thoughts cause your feelings cause your actions cause your results.
Yep.
Okay. So now if we understand that, and we go deeper, we have to understand what we're thinking and how those thoughts make us feel. And identifying triggers. Okay, so I will tell my personal story because I'm not afraid to share that my son, my angel baby, is the one who triggers me the most.
Okay.
He can set me off really, really quickly, and it always has to do with school. I will tell you, since kindergarten, school has been hell for the both of us, with double hockey sticks hell.
Okay.
So my son has ADHD, and, I would get calls from the principal when I'd be at work, single mom, okay, trying to make my way in this world,
right?
And I'd get calls from the principal. He's crawling around on the floor, breaking pencils, eating pencils. What do you want me to do about that? Seriously, what am I supposed to do about that? I would get calls from daycare or from, when he was younger, for like little things that he would do. And it's like, I don't understand what you want me to do about that, like at this point in time. So parents, I'm sure you can relate to a lot of the struggles that we go through. It's the best job, but it's the hardest job, in my opinion.
And there's no owner's manual. Like, it doesn't come with an owner's manual. You got to learn this on your own. And that's, a reason why we're bringing this topic up and sharing our stories.
And guys, she has 5 boys, so
there and is I'm not in a straitjacket. So.
No owner's manual. But where I'm trying to go with this story is understanding what triggers you. So I'll tell you, my son, I would come home from working, I'd work like 10 hours, get home, and is this homework done? No. Why haven't you done it? It's this constant battle. But where I noticed myself getting triggered is I'd be downstairs, walk up in his room, he'd be playing his video game. He's a gamer. Okay. So I automatically, what are you doing? And I would rip his headphones off of his head, and I'd be screaming at him for not doing this or not doing that. And it wasn't until I started dating my now fiance who would say, Carrie, like, relax. Screaming at him isn't going to make a difference. And I'm like, I know, but he makes me so mad. Like, I don't know what else to do. You kind of get caught up in that emotion. Mm-hmm. And then, realizing, like, take a step back. That is not the right way to parent. Like, me going in, ripping his headphones off, yelling at him is not gonna help the situation.
No, because I don't think he's immediately gonna, okay, Mom, let me go get my pencil and start doing my homework.
Well, and think about it. Let's have empathy. Let's put ourselves in his shoes. So he's been up there gaming for 4 or 5 hours, who knows? I'm downstairs cooking dinner. So I'm expecting something. I go up, he's not doing it, but he doesn't know my point of view. He's just in his own little world. Mm-hmm. So instead of me going up and ripping his headphones off and screaming at him, kindly, calmly This is me preparing myself, me noticing that I get triggered and I'm upset. Because when I open that door, I'm automatically upset because he hasn't done what I expect him to be doing or asked him to do.
Right.
And so I have to go into his bedroom and prepare myself to be calm and say, Kaysen, you know, could you do this? Could we talk about this? Can we get off of the game and let's talk about this? And
Yep.
and have a much more mature, emotionally controlled conversation that will lead to different results
Right.
than it would have before.
Absolutely. So I think that's so true in many things. So, you know, you talk about a trigger of your son doesn't get his homework done and you've been asking him to do it over and over again. So one of my triggers is my parents, my mom. Okay. She can remember anything from 40, 50 years ago and has no problem throwing it back up in your face. Okay. I've already dealt with it. I've healed from it. I've moved on from it. So it's like, it got to the point where every time I would travel to go visit them, it was like, I was nervous. I was anxious. I was dreading it, you know, and that's not how you want to be with your parents, you know? So,
Especially if you're going for Christmas.
oh, dude, I'm telling you, it's been a trigger for sure. But so anyway, again, let's go back to that awareness thing, Carrie, that we talked about in a podcast before is, you know, you got to start kind of seeing what your triggers are, or knowing what your triggers are, so then you can actually deal with them. And so in this situation, that's what would happen is every time my mom would want to start an argument with me, and I knew that that's probably what she was going to do. I built this life nugget: bite your tongue for 10 seconds. If you still want to say it, say it. But if it's not going to matter in 5 years, what's the point? And literally, that has helped me have a healthier relationship with my mom. Thank God they're still here. But it's true. I think on a lot of these emotional reactions, and the biting of your tongue is the pause, and it will help your brain literally try to help you out on trying to deal with the situation. So what are some other triggers you think that people have?
Well, in the workplace, you know, you could have a boss that piles a bunch of work on you last minute, and it's like, you don't understand what I'm doing. Or I'll give an example of I used to work for a manufacturing company. I was the VP of operations. The president was the dad, and his son was the vice president of sales.
Okay.
So I was basically in the middle of these two.
Okay.
Okay. And so we'd be in the front office talking about strategy and all kinds of stuff. And the father and son would just go back and forth. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, how am I sucked into the middle of this BS? So I remember one time I took a stapler and I handed it to the dad.
Okay.
And I said, here, now, mister, you have the talking stick. So as long as dad has the talking stick, son, you're not allowed to talk.
Right.
And so, you know, he'd get on his high horse and he'd start talking. And so I noticed the next day I was taking a shower and I had been replaying this story in my head for like 15 minutes while I'm in the shower. And I noticed myself like my heart was beating. I was starting to get like anxious and upset because I was replaying this story of what was going on in the workplace. And, you know, based upon my training, when I trained for my life coaching certification, everything, like the number one tool they taught us was this awareness, notice what you're noticing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually called metacognition.
Okay.
It's being able to analyze your thought processes. And so I noticed myself in the shower before I'm going to work already getting stressed out about the situation at work that hasn't even happened yet. Right. And so this was at a point in my life where I was trying to take my joy back and really reclaim my power and say like, I don't want to be stressing about work before I even go to work, replaying these stories. And so that might not be an example of a trigger, but it was an example of me noticing my feelings in the moment and how my thoughts, just replaying this story, was causing me to feel anxious and causing me to feel kind of stressed out before I even started my day at work.
And that's the emotional reaction. So, you know, we were talking about my mom. She triggers me. She wants to argue. And you go over and again, you have the arguments, but then you just feel exhausted when you get back. So that's why you came back to okay, I'm going to try this again. And I'm going to try to pause and think about my reaction first.
Yes.
And then when you allow yourself to do that, your emotions kind of then catch up to this front part of your brain, right?
Yes.
And then you can actually respond quietly, calmly, or try to engage the I guess interaction in a more successful way.
Yeah.
So I wish they would teach this stuff in school, because there are some people that are just anger driven, or maybe they don't know how to deal with their emotions, and that's kind of what I'm dealing with my 14-year-old right now. And so what's kind of crazy about that is you teach him, like, this is what you should do, walk away, this is what you should do, go tell a teacher. But when he's in the situation, man, he'll just bam come back with a response, and it ends up in ISS or in the principal's office.
Yep.
And so that's kind of why I think the world needs to hear about this. Look at the political environment now. You know what I'm saying? So instead of somebody saying something and then you have to immediately react to it, if you immediately react to it, shit, that might cause a damn war or something.
Right.
So you got to really, I think people need the tools of the pause.
So I had this conversation with your son, because my son and I went to go pick up Vicky's son after school. And can I share this?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so he had just
We're going to change the names of everybody in the story. No, I'm just kidding.
He got kicked off the soccer team, all right, because he was up to his 6th infraction.
Yes.
Okay, what did you do today? All right, so he said the teacher put on a movie and there was a girl in the movie and he whistled, but he said, I caught myself. I said, oh, so you tried to bite your tongue, because this is what Vicky teaches him, is bite your tongue for 10 seconds before you react.
Yes.
He goes, I caught myself when I started doing it, but I still got in trouble because he whistled. All right, it was like a half a whistle. And so, this is a skill that I think people have to build, is being able to notice when I am about to do something, because most often we just blurt it out, right? And I can tell you, before me, I used to have no filter. Like, I would just boom, no filter. I'm just going to tell you exactly what I'm saying and not.
Thinking.
But I realized how to gather myself better and be more professional. But I was talking to Vicky's son in the car, and I said, okay, so when you whistled, did you think about it, or did it just happen? He was like, it just happened. And then after it came out, that's when I tried to stop myself. And the teacher said, get to the principal's office. He's like, but I tried to stop myself. And he's like, everybody in the classroom knew I was trying to stop myself, but it was too late.
Right.
Right. So how do we build the awareness to understand that this action I am about to take is going to result in a consequence for me. So you love to play soccer, now you're kicked off the soccer team because you're not able to control your emotions. And so that was the reason why we chose this as a topic, because emotional regulation is very challenging for most people.
Yep.
But there are actual skills that you can build, and there are tactics that you can use to learn how to regulate your emotions.
Absolutely. I've heard the statement before that you don't know what somebody is going through in their own personal lives, so be kind.
Yes.
And I think that's part of what some of the triggers are. I mean, that it brings your triggers to the surface. So you may be having an absolutely crappy day, and then that has nothing related to do with work. Okay. And then somebody comes into your office and tells you something crappy.
Yep.
Okay. And you immediately, and that obviously isn't going to be productive to solve the issue, whatever it is.
Right.
But they had no clue what you were going through before, to have that response that you gave. You know what I'm saying? So, I think people do need the tools, Carrie. So that's why I'm really glad you went through the training that you did, because as we age, I think you probably get a little bit more calmer. But like I noticed some people just walk around being angry, and that if you say something to them, they're probably going to go off on you. And so either you avoid the conversation, or you really have to be skillful about how you bring it up. So, the pause, though, like you're talking about, is it's okay not to respond immediately. It's okay to just
pause. Just pause for a second.
Breathe.
Breathe.
In and out.
So if you look at this from a logical standpoint, when you're triggered that trigger can have you feeling angry, frustrated, anxious, upset. Okay,
Yep.
then you're in this emotional state of being where your emotions are now taking over. And one of the keys is to describe and label your emotions.
Okay.
Like, say, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling angry. Just by labeling it actually provides some distance between you and that emotion. So it can help empower your brain when you say, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling upset. It helps your brain to notice it and distance yourself from that emotion, so the emotion is not as heavy as it was before you put a label to it.
Okay, that makes a heck of a lot of sense. So here's an example. So one of the triggers we talked about today was parenting. Okay, so the trigger is your child refuses to listen, throws a tantrum, or just ignores what you've asked for. Okay, so the emotional response is you're pissed off, all right, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're overwhelmed, and there's a punishment coming down the road, so it's just intense. So if I did that and labeled that as I am angry, so now I've taken a pause, I've labeled it, and I've breathed a minute. So the conscious response now is, once you do that, so instead of reaching out to frustration, now you can calmly approach it and explain
Right.
why you're asking for this, right? And so maybe that conversation goes a little bit more. And then you're considering that person's needs, emotions,
Perspective.
or why are they acting out like that? You know what I'm saying? So I think it's the trigger, it's the emotional response, and then if you pause and breathe, what is actually the conscious response, right?
Right. Yeah. So when you pause, and breathing actually calms your central nervous system. So when you say the power of the pause is, guess what? I can come back to center. I can take a few deep breaths with those, and those deep breaths are going to calm my central nervous system. Because when you're in that fight or flight response, your body is actually like in survival mode. Like your digestion stops working, you stop producing saliva, your pupils dilate. Like there's all of this stuff that's happening because when you're in fight or flight, you're releasing stress hormones, and those hormones and neurotransmitters are providing the feelings. That's why you feel a certain way, because of that. Okay, so when you pause, come back to center, take a few deep breaths, your central nervous system comes back to regulation, and you can actually think. Because when you're under that condition, you can't think logically. I know for me, in past relationships, or if I felt afraid, or if we were going to get into a fight or something, like I shut down. Like I literally shut down. I can't even think. It's like I go into like this like freeze. That's my survival response, is freeze.
Wow.
And it's crazy because you really can't think logically when you're there.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of got to prepare for it before you get in that situation, kind of.
Right.
Yep.
And so when you pause, this is my opinion, is there's so much power in the present moment. So if I can come back to center and think, okay, what's happening right now? Do I really want to scream at my son? Do I really want to, act this way? Or do I want to respond consciously? Because it's actually our responsibility, our ability to respond to situations versus react.
It's true. I can see that.
We have the power. So then I have the power to respond in a way that is going to serve me, serve the other person, and get better results than I would have before.
Right. Absolutely.
So for the 14-year-old who's acting out in school, or, flipping somebody off, or whistling, doing these things without thinking, it's bringing to his awareness, listen, how can you identify how you're going to react before you do it?
Right.
So,
and I think he's making, I would say, some conscious efforts to improve on that, because I've seen that in the recent weeks of improvement after the conversations, because he needs to understand that this is causing me to be angry or causing me frustration. I'm not going to know that. I don't know that. So, it's a personal thing that you need to be aware of. You have to notice what you're noticing. You have to notice if this is going to irritate me. And I'm telling you, teenagers are a whole new freaking ball game just because of the hormones involved in it, right?
Yeah.
So, we were talking about triggers. We mentioned a few, but I just kind of want to put the rest of them out there for you guys because if these two didn't relate to you, I'm pretty sure there is. So, some of it's maybe disappointment in life. You thought you were going to get that raise and they gave it to somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Or family dynamics, the family gatherings. And there's always that aunt so-and-so that, is going to compare herself to everybody. And then that's frustrating to you. Financial stress. Holy crap. What happens when your dryer goes out and you have to spend $500 to get it repaired? That takes a hit sometimes on emotional stress. You got workplace, obviously relationships, whether...
Ooh, I had one. I had a good one I can share. So in a different...
Here we go.
I just share all the bad stuff, but that's whatever. So I was in a high level role. Again, I was a VP of operations, and I was a woman. And when you are a woman in a
high executive role,
right, or an all male dominated landscape,
okay,
sometimes in my past job it wasn't an issue, but in a recent one that I had, I felt as if I was not being included in the decision making that I should have been at the level that I was.
Correct.
And I felt I was being overlooked, and the CEO was going to the VP of sales and having side conversations without involving me. And that triggered me. And I felt that it was because I was a woman. And so then you hold kind of resentment. You have these feelings that you're dealing with, and that didn't serve me.
No, absolutely. And that's when, but again, it goes back to the reason why you pause, which is to notice what you're noticing.
Right. So instead of me flipping out,
which she has done before,
in a meeting and being like, hey guys, listen, like you can include me. The power of the pause. And just noticing what you're noticing, and then how can I respond to this consciously?
Yep.
Go back into my office and think, am I taking this personally? Is it really about me? Are they really leaving me out? And really trying to work through that.
Right. But then you can approach it with the CEO or with the owner and have a more intelligent conversation to ask the question as to why.
Yes.
Not only the power of the pause, but the power of why.
The power, yeah.
We'll get to that episode in another one.
But I mean, these things happen, you guys. And on a daily basis, I'm sure, you can get triggered, you can get offended, you can get offensive. But you have the power in the present moment to pause. Either bite your tongue for 10 seconds, whatever works for you. Take 3 deep breaths. Practice. You could say something during the pause, and this is something I use, is I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness, because that's what I want to be. I want to be loving awareness. I don't want to be judgmental. I don't want to be offensive. I don't want to be any of those things. I want to be loving awareness.
So have like a little, a key phrase
like
or something in your
affirmation.
brain. Absolutely. It's a great idea.
You could say, I choose peace. I choose peace. I choose calm. Whatever that is. That's
I love chocolate. Whatever you want to use.
that's in the power of the pause. But then reframing. Try to look at it from a different perspective. Like maybe they aren't really keeping me out because I'm a woman. Maybe there's a reason. I don't know. Or, my son, when he's video gaming, he just wants to be on there with his friends. He doesn't care about school. He hates school. So it's just been a struggle, but it is your ability to come to center and reframe that situation or scenario.
Well, and then I think the other thing is, because your mind is so powerful. So obviously it's powerful to give the pause, and then you have not an emotional reaction, but a conscious response, is to talk nice to yourself. Like,
Ooh.
Have healthy self-talk, because if you're continually being negative in your brain, that's what's going to be coming out of your mouth. And so maybe that's going to the mirror and saying, hey, you look wonderful today, or you're such a wonderful person. Whatever it is, you need to train your brain to think self-talk niceness, not negativity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I love you. You can look in the mirror and say, I love you. I love you.
It's really hard for people to do sometimes, you know that, right?
But it's
I
necessary,
agree.
isn't it? Because if you don't love yourself, how can you get through this life?
That's amen. Can I tell you?
I mean, seriously, and it's so tough because we do have negative self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I do the work that I do is because I've had to work on my own mindset
Right.
for many, many, many years. In fact, I work on it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I have on my mirror, it says, "You are beautiful," and today is going to be a great day.
Right.
And I have my affirmations written out on my mirror with dry erase marker because it's not easy. Listen, we are living this life that is unpredictable, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on.
But that's what makes it fun.
It is so much fun, but
We just want to get you through the hardships as well and not be so rough on yourself.
yeah, realizing that you have the power and only you. And if you give your power away to someone else, that situation, that conflict, that person in traffic who cut you off, then you are the one suffering.
Yep.
So don't give your power away.
It's true. Another thing to look at this for you guys is when you're in a conversation with somebody, instead of listening to respond, because like you're listening to, and you're waiting for them to shut up so that you can say what you want to say anyway. That's not healthy conversation. So you literally have to listen.
Active listening.
And then you can respond, and people feel that. You can feel that in conversations. Have you ever had a conversation before where you're like, I feel like nothing got resolved out of that, and you just walk away going, I don't even know what mattered there.
I actually had lunch with a friend of mine the other day, and she is in a new relationship, and she was talking about her boyfriend. But her past relationship, her husband never listened to her, cut her off all the time, and that was a trigger for her. So now she's in a new relationship with a boyfriend who she felt was not listening to her. And she said, "This is a big red flag for me. I need you to listen to me. I need you to hear me. I need you to practice active listening." But that is also a skill that has to be developed. And for me, it took me many years to develop that. Working in corporate America and being a manager and a leader, you have to listen.
Absolutely you do, to
And
make a difference.
Right. And if you're not listening, people won't respect you. So you can't just listen to respond. You have to listen, repeat back. This is what I hear you saying. There's so many techniques that you can learn, but again, they don't teach us this stuff in school. So let's teach active listening, emotional regulation, the power of the pause, and that you can't turn an elephant into a mouse.
Well, it's really good because I think we wish that's what, I know that everyone says, oh, well, the school can't teach you everything. This has to come from the home as well. It is. But what happens if you are one of those parents that don't know these skills because you never were taught them? And so unless you're in a situation that requires you to kind of deep dive into this, I think it is. Let's build that pause muscle. Let's learn to stop. Let's learn to bite our tongue for 10 seconds. If you still want to say it, say it. And if it's going to matter in 5 years, I guess it's worth it. If not, it's not worth the frustration. So, these are the things that we need for you to hear so that you can possibly learn this practice of the pause, because it will help you immensely in just interactions.
And if you guys listening, if you know someone who needs to hear this episode, please share it with them, share it on your social platforms, because again, the reason why we're here talking fearlessly and unfiltered is to help others. You're not alone. We all struggle through this life. There's the hills and the valleys, the ups and downs. And so it takes a village. It takes a village to raise these amazing children that we have. It takes a village to build a company and grow a company to, wherever you want it to be. It takes a village to
do this. Absolutely. Thank you, Micah. Anyway, we do love you guys. This is the Fearless and Unfiltered podcast, and please practice the power of the pause.
The power of the pause. So share this with your family, with your friends, and make sure you tune in for next week's episode. We have a really great one for you. I can't wait to share it. Thanks for hanging out with us on Fearless and Unfiltered. If you laughed, learned, or loved it, smash that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend, and be sure to join us for the next real, raw, and fearless conversation.
Remember, life's too short to play small, so stay fearless, stay unfiltered, and keep showing up with your badass self.